We live in a time where freedom is no longer a destination, but a slogan, packaged, polished, and sold to us like a product with no refund policy. From the moment we're old enough to make decisions, we're told that freedom means having options. Choosing your job, your clothes, your phone, your lunch, your favorite brand of toothpaste. We're trained to believe that because we can select from 100 variations of the same life script, we must be in control of our lives. But if you really stop and look around, you'll notice something strange. Everyone's free, yet no one seems truly at peace. We chase more, earn more, scroll more, upgrade everything, and yet most people feel tired and trapped and vaguely anxious about a life they can't explain. We've confused freedom with variety, confused motion with meaning, and assumed that more choices automatically lead to more fulfillment. But a man who chooses between cages is still not free, no matter how golden the bars or how soft the floor beneath him feels. Modern society doesn't lock you in a room. It builds a maze around you, then tells you that running faster means you're winning. And while you celebrate your ability to choose between A or B, you forget that someone else designed the whole alphabet before you ever arrived. You think you're flying because your wings move, but you've never questioned the ceiling above your head, or who put it there. Like a bird born in a cage that thinks the sky is just another wall, we've normalized the feeling of limitation as if it were part of being human. Technology makes everything feel instant, global, connected. But when the screen turns off, many of us are left with the same silence, the same emptiness. We're told we can be anything, have anything, do anything, but somehow that promise always feels slightly out of reach, like a carrot on a stick we never catch. And here's the truth no one wants to say out loud. The system doesn't need to imprison your body anymore. It only needs to distract your mind. You're not held down by chains, you're held down by hopes that have been outsourced to things you don't control: titles, promotions, retirement, applause. You keep going because the system told you freedom is coming after the next raise, the next degree, the next house, the next milestone that always moves one step further. But freedom that is always delayed is not freedom, it's a leash. Just long enough to make you feel like you're running on your own. And by the time you ask, what am I even running toward? You're often too deep into the race to turn back without fear or shame. So what if the real trap isn't where you are, but the way you've been taught to think about escape? What if freedom isn't something given or earned, but something remembered? Once you stop believing that you need permission to be yourself. What if the fastest path to freedom isn't more effort, but less illusion? Because real freedom doesn't wait for you at the end of a long, obedient life. It begins the moment you stop performing for a world that's forgotten how to be human. And you don't need 20 more years to get there. You just need one moment of clarity, where you finally see the difference between a life you've chosen and one that was chosen for you. In the modern world, freedom has been cleverly rebranded, not as a way of being, but as a product, a reward, a status symbol to be earned with compliance. You're told you'll be free when you've worked hard enough, saved long enough, and proven yourself useful enough to the system that trained you. Freedom now means early retirement, passive income, the right zip code, and the ability to post filtered photos from a villa in Bali with a caption that says, "Finally free." But real freedom doesn't come with a marketing strategy. It doesn't require you to sacrifice your youth, health, identity, and spontaneity just to buy it back later. You're not free if you spend the first half of your life chasing qualifications, approvals, and salaries just to enjoy life when your back starts hurting. That's not freedom. That's a delayed refund on the years you were forced to lease to someone else's dream. Society tells you that once you've escaped poverty, debt, or dependence, you are now free. But this is the exact illusion Fromm called freedom from. It's a version of freedom that only knows how to subtract. Freedom from hunger, from struggle, from chaos. but it never teaches you what to do when you're finally alone with yourself. You escape the old prison only to move into a nicer one, with a bigger paycheck, faster Wi-Fi, and leather seats that keep you comfortable while you remain directionless. You think you've leveled up, but all you've done is swap the visible chains for more elegant ones. Chains of identity, social approval, and chronic busyness. Modern freedom isn't about being, it's about appearing. It's about being seen as free, not feeling free, and it's exhausting. Because deep down, you know the truth. The cost of this freedom was too high. It required your silence, your energy, your weekends, your wildness. The system sold you a polished dream, and in return, you handed over your raw self, the unfiltered, unoptimized, inconvenient you. And when you finally make it, what you find waiting for you isn't freedom. It's more decisions, more upgrades, and more pressure to stay relevant. The treadmill doesn't stop when you reach the finish line. It just sells you a new model and tells you to keep running. They call it freedom, but it's really obedience with better branding. It's a cage with Netflix and next-day shipping. A modern man doesn't feel trapped because he's too busy winning, a game whose rules he didn't write, chasing a trophy that doesn't heal what he sacrificed to get there. So when you sit in your beautiful house and still feel hollow, when you succeed and still feel small, don't ignore that voice. That voice is telling you something is off, that maybe you didn't fail the system, maybe the system failed you. Because real freedom isn't given to you after enough sacrifice. It's not the final checkbox on a to-do list written by someone else. Real freedom begins when you stop playing the game that made you forget who you were in the first place. It begins when you ask not, how much more do I need to be free? But rather, why did I trade so much of myself to feel almost free? You didn't escape the prison. You just swapped an iron cage for a golden one, polished, comfortable, and designed so you'd never notice the lock was always on the inside. When you finally break free from the voices of parents, teachers, religion, or tradition, you expect to feel liberated, but instead, what you often feel is lost. You step out of one system and expect relief, but instead you meet a strange silence, one that doesn't comfort you, it unnerves you. The freedom you were promised was supposed to feel like arrival, but it ends up feeling more like free fall, with no map, no anchor, no direction. Erich Fromm called this freedom from, a form of escape that subtracts limits but offers no meaning to take their place. You free yourself from external control, but without a path forward. That space doesn't feel open, it feels empty, and that emptiness becomes unbearable. And so, without guidance, without grounding, most people begin searching for a new authority, someone else to follow, another system to belong to. They find it in a boss, a brand, a movement, or a feed. It doesn't matter who, as long as they don't have to face the responsibility of freedom. Because freedom without structure, without direction, without inner strength doesn't feel like peace. It feels like anxiety, pressure, and 1,000 unanswered questions. We leave the old masters behind only to crawl back toward new ones, shaped by status, social media, market logic, or whoever shouts the loudest that day. Fromm saw this pattern clearly. The more people escape tradition, the more they unconsciously seek replacement identities that are already packaged and approved. You think you've broken free, but you're still chasing permission from strangers, algorithms, or ideologies that trade your confusion for belonging. The system no longer needs to command you. It just needs to overwhelm you so that you'll voluntarily cling to any voice that offers clarity. That's the trap. You are not held by chains. You are held by uncertainty and your fear of navigating life without someone telling you what to do next. And in that fear, you surrender, not to violence, but to comfort, not to tyranny, but to guidance that feels easier than facing yourself. Fromm warned us that the modern individual, when cut off from external authority, feels so insignificant that he will trade freedom for structure willingly. Not because he is weak, but because he was never taught how to build meaning from within. Only how to follow what others say is meaningful. The price of freedom from is directionlessness, and without something deeper to replace the system you've left behind, you become vulnerable to manipulation all over again. This is how people become trapped in movements, ideologies, and even jobs they hate, because at least they offer rules, roles, and the illusion of certainty. The mind prefers structure over the unknown, even if that structure limits you, numbs you, or turns you into something you never chose to become. We call ourselves free because we've rejected the past, but without confronting who we are beneath the rejection, we simply drift until someone claims us again. And in that drifting, we start craving new cages, ones that look modern, progressive, empowered, but are still cages, built to quiet the fear of becoming. That is the cost of freedom misunderstood. Anxiety disguised as choice, dependence wrapped in lifestyle, and submission that feels like safety. So the next time you feel unshackled but restless, ask yourself, are you really free, or are you just floating, hoping someone will tell you who to be next? Because in this society, it's not your chains that keep you in place. It's the comfort of not having to choose your own direction in a world that punishes uncertainty. And until you define that direction for yourself, the system won't need to control you, because your fear of freedom will do it for them. Escaping a system doesn't make you free if you have no idea who you are once it's gone. And that's the problem no one prepares us for. We're taught how to reject authority, break rules, question norms, but we're rarely taught how to build anything meaningful from the ashes of rejection. You leave behind the structures that once defined you, only to stand in a void, wondering what comes next and why the silence feels heavier than expected. And that's where Erich Fromm offers something most never hear, that real freedom isn't just freedom from, it's freedom to a completely different way of being. Freedom to means having the strength to define your own path, not just the courage to walk away from someone else's. It means creating value instead of reacting to fear, becoming a self-directed human instead of a well-behaved survivor. It's the freedom to act from purpose, not from impulse, habit, guilt, or the unspoken demands of a system that no longer owns your mind. Most people stop at rejection. They rebel, disconnect, escape, but they never take the next step. Creation, responsibility, and authentic authorship of their lives. Because that kind of freedom requires more than rage. It requires awareness, maturity, and a willingness to face yourself without excuses. Fromm believed that to reach freedom a person must cultivate 3 essential capacities, and without them, we simply fall back into passive obedience. The first is self-awareness, the deep, often uncomfortable understanding that I am not what the system says I am, and never was. You're not your job title, your bank account, your productivity level, or your ability to fit into a category someone else made up. You are a whole living being with a mind capable of choosing, if you're willing to ask hard questions and face inconvenient truths. The second is personal responsibility, not the capitalist version that blames you for everything, but the existential kind that says, no one's coming to define my life but me. This kind of responsibility is heavy, not because it's oppressive, but because it's honest. You are the architect now, and the world won't applaud. And the third is the ability to love without control, to connect, commit, and care without turning people into possessions or means to your emotional survival. Because if you can't love without owning or give without expecting, you're still a prisoner, this time chained to your own insecurity. Freedom, too, is rare because it's quiet. It doesn't look like rebellion or luxury, but like inner stability in a world addicted to performance and chaos. It means working not because someone's watching, but because you believe in the work, even if no one notices, even if you don't get a trophy. It means living with purpose, even when purpose isn't trending, building a life of depth while the world sells you surface distractions. And it means refusing to let your freedom depend on a system you've already outgrown, because you no longer need it to validate your existence. True freedom is not a reaction. It's a construction, not a withdrawal. It's an emergence, not a rejection of what was, but the birth of what could be. And that's why freedom, too, is the kind of freedom no one teaches, because a society built on control has no interest in producing people who don't need to be managed. But if you understand this, if you stop measuring freedom by what you've escaped and start asking what you're building, then you're closer than most ever get. Because real freedom doesn't begin when you leave the system. It begins when you stop needing the system to exist. If freedom isn't something handed to you after obedience, and it's not found in rebellion alone, then where is it, and how do you get there fast? Most people waste decades chasing freedom like a finish line, only to realize they were running in circles around someone else's definition of success. They wait for the right salary, the right title, the right moment to begin living freely, but the moment keeps moving and they keep postponing their life. They think freedom will come after they've sacrificed enough, proved enough, suffered enough. But that version of freedom is just another form of control. The truth is, the fastest way to reach freedom is to stop chasing it as a future reward and start recognizing it as a present choice. Freedom doesn't begin when you have enough. It begins when you stop needing more to justify your existence. It starts the moment you stop measuring your worth by how well you conform to expectations that were designed to keep you average. The fastest path to freedom is not about acceleration. It's about interruption, the kind that breaks the trance of constant performance and forced ambition. Every time you stop seeking permission to be yourself, you step closer to freedom, because freedom is found in authenticity, not approval. Every time you pause before reacting to the crowd, before reaching for validation, before following the path of least resistance, you reclaim your power. Each time you notice your urge to impress and choose to remain silent, still, and grounded, you train yourself to need less from a world that profits when you feel lacking. You don't have to burn everything down or vanish from society to be free. You just have to stop borrowing your identity from people who don't know you. You just have to stop performing a version of yourself that fits their expectations but erases your truth. Real freedom is not the reward for playing the game well. It's the exit from a game that was never worth your soul to begin with. And the way out is simpler than we're told. Stop defining your value by how useful you are to a system that doesn't love you. Let go of the hunger to be seen, admired, promoted, or included by those who confuse your worth with your compliance. Let go of the story that tells you success is the same thing as peace, or that constant motion is the same thing as purpose. The fastest way to reach freedom is by subtraction, removing the lies, the noise, the scripts, and the roles that were never yours to carry. Less obligation, less pretending, less running toward things you don't truly want, just to prove something you don't truly believe. Each time you choose silence over performance, solitude over popularity, intention over urgency, you step out of the current and into clarity. Because freedom isn't reached by doing more, earning more, or becoming more. It's reached by needing less from the outside to feel complete on the inside. You don't need 20 more years to find it. You don't need a title, a number, a breakthrough, or a perfect plan. You just need to stop believing the lie that freedom must be delayed. Because once you stop accepting that freedom is something to earn, you begin to live like someone who never needed permission in the first place. Freedom isn't a prize handed out at the end of a long, obedient life. It's a personal revolution that begins the moment you stop waiting to be chosen. It's not something you earn after you've proven your worth to society. It's something you reclaim the day you stop letting society define your worth. You don't need to hit a milestone, get a promotion, or finally be ready to start living your life on your own terms. Freedom starts when you stop performing for approval and begin choosing truth, even when no one claps for it. You don't have to escape the system physically to be free. You just have to stop letting it own your thoughts, shape your identity, and steal your peace. Fromm said it clearly. We are afraid of freedom because it demands that we become ourselves. And becoming yourself is the hardest work you'll ever do, because it means facing the silence, facing the fear, facing all the parts of you that were never given permission to exist. True freedom requires that you stop outsourcing your soul to a culture addicted to validation, control, and endless distraction. It asks that you become your own authority, not in arrogance but in integrity, not in rebellion but in responsibility. You won't find freedom in someone else's formula because their map wasn't drawn for your terrain. You must become the cartographer of your life, the one who chooses not just where to go but why it matters. The people who are truly free don't need to prove it to anyone because their life itself becomes the proof. They may still work, still live in the world, still move among the system, but they are no longer defined by it. They no longer panic when they're unseen, unliked, or misunderstood because their compass is internal, not external. They've stopped trying to win at a game they no longer respect. They've chosen peace over performance, presence over progress, and purpose over popularity. And in doing so, they've found a kind of power no one can give or take away. So if you feel the tension, the conflict, the quiet ache of living a life that doesn't feel fully yours, don't numb it, listen to it. That discomfort is the voice of your freedom, whispering that you're not lost, you're just ready to stop lying to yourself. You don't have to tear down the world to become free. You just have to stop building a life that betrays your soul. You don't have to disappear or become someone else. You just have to return to the version of you that never needed permission. Because freedom isn't found in perfection, achievement, or approval. It's found in the moment you finally decide to live without a mask. And that moment can be now. So stop waiting for someday. Stop postponing your peace. Stop living on delay, as if the life you want is always just out of reach. You are not too late. You are not too broken. You are simply one decision away. Freedom is not a place. It's not a possession. It's not a prize. Freedom is a choice. And now, it's yours.